I know that we're keeping.
Let's watch two Daniel Davis deep dives into Iran. The first one is about US and Iran battle of economics. Who fails first? The US, the world economy. Like and subscribe.
I know that we're keeping roughly 32% of the profits of any of the oil that is sold that comes out of Venezuela, which is a very high percentage. It's actually higher than the sort of reparations that we insisted the Germans pay after World War I. At that point, we and the Allies were taking 13% of whatever the Germans exported. So that's kind of an interesting comparison, 13% after World War I and 32% today. And
Wait,
the argument,
US is taking 32% of Venezuela's oil? Okay, right there demonstrates the typical situation. Before, all of Venezuelan oil, the profits went to Venezuela. Now, only 32% goes to Venezuela. What happened? Regime change by the United States. And now the country's resources are being graped by the United States. 32%. That's just batshit insane.
was, well, we're using that to pay for the initial operation that captured Maduro and his wife. But obviously, it goes far beyond that. I don't know what other things he's talking about. If we're talking about more sanctions, more bullying.
And the leaders in Venezuela who cooperated with the United States, that's another example, perfect example of what happens after U.S. intervention. Corrupt politicians, leaders in that country, sell out their country, giving 32% of the oil profits to the United States, and in exchange, they get into power. And they're probably getting big kickbacks from all this.
More pressure in that regard. I don't think those things can have the desired effect. I think whatever happens in that department is going to be either shrugged off or defeated. And it'll be defeated with the help of other countries increasingly aligning with Iran. And that's one of the things that I don't think we realize. We're beginning to see the gradual arming and weaponization of what I would call the BRICS alliance. It started out as simply a giant trade union. In other words, an operation to build an alternative to our.
Oh, and on this topic, this is what happened the week after we did the Maidan Revolution in Ukraine, is we seized all of Ukraine's gold and flew it out of the country. Well, it looks like U.S. is reportedly set to seize Venezuela's gold reserves held at the Bank of England. 31 tons of Venezuelan gold valued at around $4 billion will be transferred to the United States, potentially depriving Venezuela of control over the assets. Obviously depriving Venezuela control over the assets. Because that's what U.S. puppets do for the United States. They turn over all the country's gold.
Financial system, which we exploit and employ to bully people to get them to do what we want. How do you get out from under it? Well, you leave it. And you operate entirely in this new China-centric financial system that is emerging around BRICS. So I think those things are underway. And some people call that de-dollarization. I think that's underway. What I guess I'm driving at is we've done an enormous amount of damage to ourselves. I don't see.
The far left protests are backed by substantial Chinese funding. China is a wolf nurtured by American left-wing globalist efforts. Therefore, please stop trading with China. Unfortunately, when U.S. put sanctions on or tariffs on China, they started just rerouting a lot of their manufacturing through Malaysia and avoiding those tariffs. Inflation is already going to be bad because of the oil. If you cut yourself off from cheap Chinese goods, you could go up to double-digit inflation in the United States, and that would wreak absolute havoc in the financial system. So at this point, after the Iran war, I don't think the United States can even afford to cut itself off from China. That's not even considering that China makes all the rare earths, and we can't make anything, jack shit militarily, without those rare earths from China. We should never have outsourced our manufacturing sector to China. Never.
Any evidence that anything we do at this point against Iran is going to be good for the United States, the American people, and our long-term strategic interests. But I don't think there is any long-term strategy. I don't think we've ever had a long-term strategy. The only one we can point to in recent years is obviously containment within the last several decades, and that's gone by the wayside. So this is a very short-sighted operation with very short-term interests. The interest to annihilate Iran, make them, surrender, if you will, to Donald Trump.
Yeah, Trump wants to take 32% of Iran's oil too. That's what he was after when he bombed Iran. Yeah, Supreme Leader. He wanted to do Venezuela and take 32% of Iran's oil. The greedy little bastard. And backfire on him spectacularly.
Good luck. Don't think
Okay,
it's
so let me ask you a hard question here. Again, if Iran does take the initiative here, and if they start a sequence that spawns a response by the United States kinetic, and then that they take that as a I guess taking the gloves off, and they hit all those targets you mentioned, which is gonna I don't think it can have any effect other than having a catastrophic economic impact, major recession, possibly depression on the United States, which is going to cause us a great deal of problems throughout the world. What is the possibility or the implications, maybe even a better way to put it, for Iran to calculate, hey, listen, we can start a next round here that will definitely have a response, and they'll hit our oil infrastructure, they'll hit our energy, and it'll be very, very painful and a long time to fix. But that could ultimately cause the defeat of the United States, and our long-term objectives may be met. Is that a calculation that they could rationally choose?
I think it is. And I think that you're talking about damage done to the Persian Gulf region and its infrastructure that would require at least 10 years to recover. So you're
History teaches us a lesson. All fortified fortresses are breached from within. Yep. Except I don't think Trump has anybody in Fortress Iran to breach it from within, or that would have happened already. But as for the United States, yes, it was breached from within a long time ago, unfortunately.
talking about a definite global level depression, and I think we're well on our way in that direction at this point as well. One of the things that's kind of interesting is to watch Scott Bessent, and he's very sensitive to the bond market. We're now way over 5% in the 30-year bonds. This last bond sale was enormously expensive for us. We're in a lot of trouble financially. And Scott
Bessent's probably knew that the bond market would get in trouble because he's the one who probably been buying back the put on treasuries that the Federal Reserve has been selling. When after the MOU and oil crashed, it went quickly bought back all those puts that the Fed has been selling on long-term treasuries to keep rates down. And that's why the rates started soaring long before oil started going up.
Is using every conceivable trick and illusion that he has in his bag to sort of postpone the inevitable financial collapse that I think is coming. I've always looked at, because I have great confidence and trust in what Jeffrey Goodluck and Luke Groen and others talk about. I also look at this 5% barrier on the 10-year bond, and everybody makes it very clear if you break that and you go over 5% yield on the 10-year bond, you're in uncharted territory, and that could be catastrophic for us.
Yep.
You see, we're getting close to that now.
Yeah, this is the end of the petrodollar system, which is
True.
I think, and frankly, at this stage, dead anyway, which just recycled dollars from the
It would have happened anyway, but Trump accelerated it probably like 5 years by attacking Iran.
Persian Gulf back into the United States. That's gone. You don't find anybody wants to invest in our debt. We sort of postponed a collapse in Japan, but doing so harmed the euro because we used the euro. Of course, as a banker said to me the other day in Europe, he said, "Who are we kidding? The euro and the dollar are the same thing. It's all dollars." I said, "Oh, okay." I think we're in a very fragile set of conditions right now financially.
So let me ask you this:
I guess I don't know which one breaks first, Dan. Does it break here at home financially first, or does it blow up in the Gulf and then break here financially? I don't know.
Yeah, but it's just a matter of maybe the sequence, not whether. In the event that that happens, let's just kind of put this in the context of the world that we're heading into. So, by all accounts, there's going to be a bloodbath come November. We're now less than 90 days out to that. And the likelihood is that the next Congress that seats on January 3rd of next year is going to be overwhelmingly Democratic. It's possible even the Senate could
Entirely caused by Trump.
go blue as well. I've heard from some folks here in Washington that claim to have some knowledge that the Democrats already have a cohorted plan that they're just going to just do investigation after investigation, probably impeachment series, whatever, to completely hamstring President Trump and the Democrat or the Republicans.
And the sad thing is, I think Trump deserves it at this point. So I was completely on Trump's side first term when the Democrats did that to him. It was all nonsense on the Democrat side. This time, though, there are so many legitimate things to investigate Trump from. I think he's in much more trouble
Through the next 2 years heading into 2028. That's apparently their plan. So when you have this political dysfunction, which is going to just keep President Trump on the defensive the whole time, at the same time that we have, if this goes back into kinetic and we have a severe economic strain on us, what concerns do you have about the viability and the stability of the United States domestically?
It cost the Jewish Zionist power structure in the United States an estimated $37 million to expel Thomas Massie from office. Now, what will it cost them to retain control of enough of the House and the Senate to prevent Donald Trump's removal from office? I don't know. But if it costs $37 million to expel just one member, and they have a lot of money. I mean, there are pots of money that they have been accumulating out there, and I'm talking about this Zionist Jewish power structure involving hundreds of millions of dollars that could be applied with the goal of preventing Donald Trump from being removed so that they can retain control of the United States government. Now, they've already got it at this point because we know that 80% of the House and the Senate is effectively paid by the lobby to do what it wants. So that's a fact. You just
Yeah, but Israel is getting real unpopular, and Trump is going to be very unpopular as gas prices continue to go up, as companies go out of business, people lose their jobs, as there's a huge recession because of his bloody, stupid Iran war. No, Democrats will be under insane pressure to impeach him. And they've promised their base for so many years that they'd impeach Trump. No, Democrats going easy on Trump and not impeaching him and not taking him out, I don't think they can. I think the hate train on Trump has gone on too long for them not to act on it.
just run through, look at the amounts of money that go in there. And it's amazing. Sometimes it's a lot of money and sometimes it's not that much. But members are so greedy for money and so desperate for money to stay in office that they'll do almost anything to keep it. So I guess my assumption is that this election is probably not going to go well for Trump in particular. But the real issue is, what about this lobby? Can it
Trump could have maybe saved Republicans by giving up Israel, like early on, for example, living up to the MOU. And he could just go down as a failed president there by surrendering to Iran. But it might have saved Republicans in the midterms. Of course, he didn't choose to do that because he's an egomaniac.
retain control? That, I think it has a shot at doing so. I wouldn't write it off yet. Now, of course, that could change if the financial system crashes between now and November, and that's not an impossibility. I mean, if you listen to Ray Dalio and others, they'll say it could very easily happen. So I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. Can't know.
Financial system crashing before November? No, it's not going to happen. I am fairly sure about that for a bunch of reasons. The stock market crashing before November, now that's a different story.
With precision when this sort of thing happens, but that could. Now, when you talk about domestic tranquility. Remember, we have over 50 million people inside the United States right now who are not born here. How many of those are illegal? How many of those are legal? I don't know what the exact breakdown is, but normally the numbers that you get from the federal
The type of globalization we've had over the last, few decades hasn't been real globalization. It's been exploitative globalization, rigged globalization. The promise of globalization, I think, ultimately is true in an honest system, but we haven't had an honest system, and so that's why it's failed so totally.
government, depending on the administration, are lies. They're not true. So I think we have tens of millions of illegals in the country. What will most of them do? And I think it depends. It also depends on people that hold U.S. citizenship, but frankly, they're only nominally Americans. I mean, they sort of sit there and say, I'm an American. Okay. What makes you American? Well, I have citizenship. Well, popcorn, candy, citizenship. Take your pick. It's not that difficult to acquire, frankly. Not for anybody with any kind of money or influence. It's tougher for somebody without any. And a lot of people have worked very hard to get that citizenship, which is one of the reasons they're angry about illegal immigration. But my point is, we don't know how lots of groups will, react. Some groups can go back to where they came from, at least until things here calm down. Other groups have nothing to go back to. And then you have the question of the rule of law. Where do we stand on that right now?
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of remigration in the future of both the United States and Europe. And the process of getting that done, there might be a lot of violence in it.
How many police or policemen have left the service because they're afraid to do their jobs? They're afraid that if they do their jobs, they'll end up in front of a judge, and this judge is going to castigate them and ultimately crucify them and put them in jail when what they did was their job. How do you fix these things?
And who do we have to blame for that? George Floyd. And a police officer that just did his job and now is in prison.
Remember, if we go back to 2016, these are the things that Donald Trump was elected to do. It didn't work out very well for him because he didn't know what he was doing during his first term. Then there was the hope that if he got a second term, or in this case, the term that comes after Biden, that he may have learned something and got something right. We discovered this time around he's not even in control. He doesn't govern. It's the lobby that governs. So what could happen? I think everything from outright social disintegration, societal disintegration into chaos, to mild unrest in all of the nation's big cities, because it's in the cities that are concentrated two kinds of people. Very high end income people, not very many, but a lot. And then at the other end, large numbers of people who have nothing.
That is the hallmark of a third world country. A rich 1% and around them an ocean of poverty. And America is slowly meeting that standard.
And if they can't get what they need to survive and they already have nothing, they tend to be reckless. So I can't go into any greater detail, but I think we have to accept the fact that none of this is good news. And it makes you wonder just how completely out of touch everybody in Washington is. And every time I visit the place and I talk to people, I think they're living in somewhere along the line of the 1960s or the late 80s, early 90s. They're not living in the world that is America today.
Yeah, that's one of the things I worry about that very thing, because it's unknown, but it's almost certainly going to be bad if we go down this path.
Yeah, there will be a lot of chaos in the future. How soon it arrives, I think it's not right away. It's going to take still a few years before things get out of hand, let's say. I think that the faith in mainstream media needs to fall even more than it has already. It needs to break even more than it has already. People like Asmongold need to learn more of the truth than he has already. That's some of the prerequisites to, let's say, things working themselves out. And the dollar needs to start its death spiral. And none of that is going to probably happen in next year. But we are going to have a financial crisis next year. And we're going to, I think, we're never going to recover from that financial crisis. We're going to limp along in like a zombie world in terms of banks and everything, as it's just going to accelerate inflation more and more and more until the dollar collapses. Yep. Well, anyway, I got off topic from the economic battle, but I guess that is part of it, because that is what Iran is trying to cause. It's trying to accelerate the U.S. decline, the dollar's decline, and it has succeeded in that. This gas at all-time high is going to put pressure on the global economy and U.S. specifically. The yen carry trade is one example of the high import costs Japan is suffering because of the high energy cost. Has destroyed its trade balance and causing the currency to go down, and they're under pressure to sell their like $4 to $5 trillion of U.S. assets to prop up their currency. And that is not good for the United States. That's one example. Anyway, this will be on YouTube. Like and subscribe. Can watch on Kick or Twitch. And I'll see you next video. Bye.